Hello and welcome everyone to another Sales Hacker webinar. My name is Scott Barker. I'll be moderating this discussion today. I run partnerships with Sales Hacker, also act as an evangelist at outreach.io, and appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us today. I know we're all extremely busy, trying to hit quota, trying to get meetings, trying to manage the team, whatever it is that you do, but we're excited to have you. And I know this is going to be an awesome discussion. So what we're going over today is this idea that summer is coming to an end, and it kind of feels like, I remember, always feeling like it's go time once like September was around the corner and summer slowness is over. And we're going to be sharing some ridiculously easy sales hacks, to stay hot. So we're going to take a deep dive into some of the best sales hacks that we all have, to kind of combat stagnation as the seasons change, and additionally just show you how to cultivate a winning game plan moving forward. But before I introduce my awesome guests, because I do have some awesome guests, let's do a super quick poll. I want to see who we have in the room with us today. We had almost 1,000 people register for this one, so it was pretty crazy. So I would love to know what your role is. Are you an SDR? Are you account executive? Or are you a manager or above? And then that's going to help us kind of frame this conversation a little bit moving forward. And so if we can launch that poll now. To launch it. Let me see. Oh, there we go. Cool. So we'll take 10 seconds. And while everyone is doing that, I do want to introduce my guests. I am joined by Tito Bohort, the CEO and founder of Alti Sales. I am also joined by Andrew Mewborn, an account executive at outreach.io, also a longtime outreacher who's been there since almost the beginning. And then Lauren Penny, who's a sales enablement and training manager at ZoomInfo/DiscoverOrg. Welcome, everyone.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks for having us, Scott.
Pumped for having you all. And as always, I do like to, just provide a little bit more color just for the audience's sake. So, Lauren, do you want to just give us a really quick rundown on how you got to where you're at today?
Sure. So for most of my career, I was in sales. I've done pretty much every sales position you can think of, cold calling, prospecting. I was a new business account executive here at ZoomInfo. I did some account management work. And so about now at the beginning of 2019, so almost a year ago, we realized that there was a need here for someone to step in and help with our sales enablement mission. So I was tapped and asked if I'd like to step into that role. I saw it as a challenge and something new and exciting. And I was right, because about a month later, we went through an acquisition with DiscoverOrg. And since then, it's just been awesome. My main role is two-faceted. So I help onboard our newest hires and also ensure that our entire go-to-market team is enabled with all the changes we're going through.
That's awesome. That must have been quite the transition going from, competing head on to now, teammates. But it's amazing. I've talked to a lot of, people on both sides, and it seems to be going extremely well for you guys.
Yeah, it is. It's been a fun, wild ride.
Nice. I love it. And then now you can say you've navigated an acquisition, which is always a cool thing to be able to say.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to Tito, my man. How did you come to create this company, Alti Sales, and become the LinkedIn famous man that you are?
Thanks. Well, my background is interesting. I've been building SDR teams for 7 years now. So I started in 2012 with a company that had the premise of hiring recent college grads in the US. And just like all millennials want to travel, offer them the opportunity to go to South America just to keep the same time zone and work out of Costa Rica or Mexico or some exotic location on the beach. Still doing SDR work, selling stuff to the US. And that worked really well for a few years. And then the model has been shifting. Now I run a fully remote company. We're about 25 employees in 9 different countries. And we're a company that does SDR outsourcing with a consulting mindset. So we really go in depth into our clients' like products, value propositions, and build them an SDR team that's world class, so that either they can start a brand new SDR team or have their internal SDR team have benchmarks for what is top performance look like. And yeah, sometimes we've been able to 4x the results of other companies when it comes to meetings per SDR per month. And it's been a fun journey of trying to figure out how to be really, really cutting edge. And I very openly share a lot of our tips and tricks across the board. So it's a pleasure to be here.
It's incredible, man. It's been so cool to watch your journey. And if anyone is listening to this from Boston, Tito is actually keynoting a talk almost right after this at our Unleash Summit series going on in Boston right now at the Marriott Copley Place. So if you're in Boston, go find this man. He's going to have a great talk. And last but not least, my good friend Andrew Mewborn. Andrew, what's up, man? How did you get on this journey that you've been on with Outreach now for a while? And you recently made a switch into an AE role from a solutions consultant. So talk through that a little bit.
Definitely. Yeah. So where it all started, speaking of South America, Tito, I was down in Chile building a solar business. I was actually an electrical engineer, also trying to make solar sales. At the time, I was like, wow, before Outreach really was like popping off and huge, I was like, I need something like Outreach. That story came to an end. I came back to the U.S. after doing that solar business, and I found Outreach. It was, I think, less than 20 employees at the time, and I was like, I need to get me a piece of this company because many people are going to need what they're offering, right? So I applied. They originally told me no, and they said, Andrew, we don't want you. And I said, you know what? I'm not taking that for an answer. So and she joined the company, and that was about 4 years ago. So I've been here since then. From every role of being in product and engineering to solutions consulting to now an account executive. So super stoked to be talking to you guys.
Awesome, man. Very cool. All right. So we've got the right people in the room for sure to talk through these questions. And I want to just share the results of our poll. So turns out the poll didn't help us too much because it's almost an exact even split. So we've got 36% coming from sales development reps, 32% account executives, and 34% managers and above. So a fairly even split. Luckily, all of the questions that we're discussing today will apply to each of you and kind of your sales workflow, and we'll do our best to kind of broach the question from individual contributor as well as manager. And yeah, we also hope that you pass on these to your colleagues and your sales team to help them kick off their productivity. But let's dive right into it. Tito, I think I'm going to start with you on this one. What sort of hacks, if any, does your team use to help ramp reps faster and better use the technologies at their disposal?
Yeah, definitely. Great question. And I'm going to have a different view on this question than maybe most big companies, because what I've seen is big companies spend a long time kind of like onboarding and doing workshops and coaching people before they get them on the phone. At AltiSales, we really believe that people learn most by doing. So our easy hack is on day one, people get on the phones. And the way we onboard and coach people is by just recording a lot of their calls and listening to call recordings and help them figure out what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong. And then whatever we're teaching them in the first couple of weeks, we just test them on about a month later. On any knowledge gaps, we continue to reinforce. So there's not really like a big workshop. There's not really it's hit the ground running, we'll make mistakes, learn by doing. We just throw them in the water, and they're gonna learn to swim by just not drowning. So that's our strategy. Works really, really well. We ramp people super quickly. And then I have an unfair advantage in the company where we have obviously all our paid clients for whom like we really need to have excellent SDRs. And then I have some angel investments that I've made over the past couple of years where I just give them SDR services for free. So when I first onboard an SDR to the company, I give them to my companies that they're not really paying us on a month-to-month basis. so they can make more mistakes with less risk. And then once they've been onboarded for 4 to 6 weeks, I can deploy them into a client. And the way I would do that if I were you and you have just one company that you work for is give them some of the leads that maybe aren't taught. Don't give them the best accounts, give them the smaller accounts, or minimize the cost of failure and allow them to fail a lot in the early days.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Minimize the cost of failure and allow them to fail a lot. That's definitely the quickest way that we all learn. I remember my first one of my first inside sales jobs ever was cold calling at a travel agency, basically. And I remember they actually gave us the option on our first week. We can either jump on the phones or we can just shadow people. And the people that jumped on the phones, which I decided to, there was a massive correlation between those people that just jumped in and, like you said, failed fast and had success down the road. So I think that's a great hack to do it. Lauren, same question to you. So what sort of hacks, what do you use at ZoomInfo, DiscoverOrg to help ramp new reps? This is obviously something that you live, eat, and breathe as a sales enablement and training manager, and then also get them used to using some technologies.
Sure. So I see this, again, I kind of phase my mind around two things, which is onboarding and then ongoing training. From an onboarding perspective, exactly to Tito's point, when a rep is just starting up, there's so much for them to learn that if you sit them in a room and just have them hear lecture upon lecture, they're not going to really retain that much, right? We all remember our first day being at a new company and we're excited, but we're probably not going to remember anything we learned on day one. So what we really focus on here at ZoomInfo and DiscoverOrg are really empathy building type workshops, in addition to getting our reps on the phone very quickly, just like Tito mentioned. Because you may not remember all of the ins and outs of what's going to get your buyer through the finish line. You may not remember, the ins and outs of how to open and close a contract in your specific CRM instance within your first week. But if I can have you sit in the seat of, for instance, we sell to marketing and sales. So I'm going to make you sit in a workshop and I'm going to make you do the job of a marketer and I'm going to set you up to fail. And then I'm going to give you that same exact scenario and I'm going to set you up to succeed. Obviously, in our case, the differential is our product. And I want them to see and feel and experience what it's like to struggle in our customers' shoes so that they can empathize. Because you may not remember a list of facts and figures, but you certainly remember the way you feel. And I think a successful onboarding program is thank you.
I would too, for sure.
If I can get you in the trenches with your customer and understanding what it is that they're feeling before they make that decision from you, that I think is success. And also, I want you to be so pumped that you made a great decision joining a great company, because the biggest takeaway you're going to feel from your first week is, how do I feel leaving the doors on Friday? Did I make the right decision to be here? And you know that within your first week more than anything else. Now, to answer your question from ongoing and kind of tools, I think one thing that we've learned through this recent merger is we've gone through a lot of different tool selection, merging tools, finding processes that work best for each of us. And we've had teams of really amazing people dedicated to ensuring that our sales force is working, purchasing new tools, phasing out old ones. And we don't want our sales team to just get their login and assume, okay, well, now I have this, I'll use it when I want to. No, if we're going to invest in something like Chorus so that you can become better and review your calls, if we're going to invest in something like Outreach so that we're taking all of this weight off your shoulders from going through and prospecting, well, you've got to earn your stripes, right? So we have certifications before we release any of our products. And one thing that we trialed was we just upgraded to Lightning. In order to get your Salesforce Lightning login credentials and therefore be able to do your job and close deals, you had to pass a certification. That certification, we actually had you log into a sandbox environment, close a deal. And that encouraged adoption. And also, you can't get your login to this cool tool that we've purchased on your behalf if you can't prove to us that you know how to use it and that you're going to use it.
That was a fantastic answer. There was a lot.
A lot, yeah.
Kind of unpack. That was amazing. I love this idea, and it's an interesting thought experiment. Imagine if a new hire a new seller, account executive, SDR, we could make them do the job of the person they sell into for a week, and how amazing that would be, which I think is kind of what you're trying to cultivate over there, which is amazing. All right, Andrew, you're up, my man. That's a hard answer to follow, but I don't know
how I'm going to compete with that one there. So I'll tell you how we do it here at Outreach. Really, we've done multiple iterations of this process over the past 5 years or so. And specifically, I'll focus on the SDR side of the house, XDR. So what we do is we run a 1-week boot camp. And in that boot camp, each day is broken up by essentially the tactics you're going to need to do your job, right? And so through iterations, we found that the 20% of the items you need to be doing or the activities you need to be completing in order to produce, those 80% of the results, which is, how do you get a meeting, right? The big areas that we focus on that I think a lot of SDR shops that I talk to miss out on is not just teaching them the tools that they need to use, but going back to what Lauren said, teaching them about the personas they're talking to and the market they're in, right? So how do these people think? What do they care about? What are their pain points? How do you twist the knife a little bit even, right? In terms of what they're doing. That way, when they do get on the phone, right, and they talk to these personas, they can have an actual conversation and know what they're talking about. So I think that's a big one there. And that goes back to Lauren's being empathetic, right? Understanding their viewpoint. So, and you always see our top SDRs are the ones that understand those personas the most, right? They understand those pain points the most. They get it. They study that. They listen to the podcast and try and understand that market. So I think that's a big one. And then when we bucket these different sections of the boot camp, we actually get them, as Lauren was also saying, to do the task at hand that they will be doing and practice on that. So a little bit of role play. On LinkedIn a few weeks ago, you may have seen Blue Hair Sam Nelson post about how we actually work with the SDRs and have them sell pizza to different people, and we make that a fun activity for them, right? Actually getting an outreach, trying to sell a pizza to prospects in some way, right? And at the end there's a prize of some sort. So we actually have them go through the motions, and as we do that, we coach them. And it's not just it's actually SDR managers coaching them that have been SDRs in the past as well, so that they can get that level of attention that they need in order to get that done.
Yeah. I love that. And the pizza thing is so interesting. And that's really just to get them over that call reluctance, right? If you can call someone, cold call them out of the blue and try and, sell them a pizza, then everything else, doesn't seem as difficult, because it's just a fun thing to get them used to being on the phone. I love that. So yeah, it seems like there's kind of this red thread of what I was hearing through a lot of that from Lauren and Andrew and a little bit of Tito is, don't worry so much at the beginning about teaching them the platform, and focus more on the personas in the industry more than the technology itself, which I would agree with for sure. I know something that I've done in the past, and you could do this if you're listening tomorrow, is go find whatever persona that you sell into in your respective org. So if you sell into CTOs, go find your CTO at your organization and set up a bi-weekly or a monthly coffee chat where you can just talk through their goals, their initiatives, whatever keeps them up at night, and just constantly have that flow so you can put yourself in their shoes. It's an easy way to do that. All right, going back to you, Tito. Obviously, you have a team of, what did you say, there's 25 now?
Yeah, about 25 people in the company.
That's awesome. So when you start growing, a team like that, and I know Lauren, you guys must have, hundreds at this point. What's the best way for an SDR or an AE to cultivate alignment? And then also kind of this goal-oriented mindset when it comes to maximizing their selling process.
Yeah, and I think alignment can be approached from so many ways. So one is everybody incentivized to go find the biggest, juiciest, easiest to close deal to maximize company revenue? And that goes all the way back from like how you're compensating your SDRs, right? Are you just compensating them on a meeting being set, on the meeting being held? Are you compensating on pipeline creation, on revenue, and how you align your team on that? And then the other question is also, do you pair them up? Do you pair up an SDR with an AE, or do you not pair them up? Do you do it maybe by vertical or by some other way to split your team by territory, right? So we're gonna have 10 SDRs and 10 AEs on the East Coast and 10 SDRs and 10 AEs on the West Coast, and that's how we split it. And within those territories, they're round robin. So there's a lot of different strategies. Here's what I recommend. If you have a very enterprise level product, let's say 50K plus, definitely if you're 100K plus, your account executives are going to want to have a dedicated SDR to help them prospect into specific accounts. They have really target accounts. Now, I don't recommend pairing them up fully. I would never grab one SDR and one AE and put them on the same team, because what happens there is if you have a really good SDR and a really good AE, you have an amazing team. If you have a really bad SDR and a really bad AE, you have a horrible team. Those are easy to sort out. But then the middle of the pack, sometimes you have a very, very good SDR with a not so great AE, or a really, really great AE with a not so good SDR. And they're both going to point the finger at each other when the results are not coming. So when you ask the SDR why, or when you ask the team, right, why aren't you guys closing more deals? The AE will always say, well, he's not getting me enough meetings, or the quality of meetings he's getting are not great and are not good enough, or whatever else. And the SDR is going to be like, no, I'm booking like the best, highest quality, blah, 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 people I can. And, the AE is just not great at closing. And it's really hard to dissect the data and figure out who needs training, right? I don't want to say whose fault it is, but who needs training, who needs to be enabled and better coach. So what I recommend doing is pair them up partially. Grab your AEs, give them a dedicated SDR that they can use for prospecting into their top 10 or 20 accounts, but then have the SDR spend the rest of his time 50 to 75% or 50 to 80% also booking meetings for other AEs. What it's going to allow you to do is now if an AE is closing deals, you can see, is he only closing deals from one SDR, or is he closing for multiple SDRs? And if somebody's failing, now you can isolate the data. And the second benefit, which is huge there for alignment, is also when an SDR gets promoted or leaves or something changes, it's not just one AE suffering, right? If you have your best SDR paired with a certain AE, they're killing it, AE is crushing quota, all of a sudden SDR gets promoted to AE, Neo SDR comes into the role for the Neo AE is frustrated. Holy cow, I need to retrain my SDR all the way from the ground up. We got to rethink accounts. We got to rethink everything. So by having them 20% paired and 80% round robin, you can much better align your team and prevent promotions or layoffs from destroying productivity. So sorry, long answer there.
No, that's awesome. that makes so much sense. It just allows you to be so much more prescriptive when you're in there coaching, and you're not just, going off of instinct of who you think is, the top performer and the bottom. Lauren, same question your way. How are you guys cultivating alignment and then this goal-oriented mindset where everyone is, running the same race essentially?
Yeah. So I think going with the theme of this talk, which is how do we reinvigorate kind of motivation as we head into the fall. One thing that we've been doing specifically for our SDR team, but could be fun across the entire organization, is we're capitalizing on the fact that salespeople are competitive. If you want to push people to hit their quota, cool. Your comp package should probably do that on its own, right? But you can set the bar just that little bit higher and also establish a really cool competitive culture with things that really don't cost that much. So an example is we went onto Amazon and bought a $30 wheel it was dry erase. So you go on and you can write in really whatever you want as prizes. And then we set that bar a little higher for our SDR team, right? So if the quota is you need to book 25 meetings, all right, great. That's your OTE. Of course, you're going to hit commission for anything you make over that. But if you can be that person on your team that hits 30 or 35, well, now you've just joined this elite club that at the end of the day, you get together right outside our CEO's office, and only you, if you hit that high bar, now spin that wheel. And the wheel doesn't have to have extravagant prizes on it. If it's at the end of every day, well, maybe it's got like a $5 Starbucks gift card, or maybe you get to go out to lunch with your manager. But remember, our SDR team, exactly to Tito's point, if you're crushing it, you want to move up. You want to be an AE. You want that exposure. And so some of those prizes on there are things like, hey, sit down and have dinner with our new CEO. This is someone you want FaceTime with. Everyone's clamoring for FaceTime with our new CEO. What if we can help you do that as an SDR? That could be a giant prize, but little things. Maybe you go out to lunch with your manager. So things that are going to help guide your career, I think are just as important, if not more so than your commission. You can hit those by setting an even higher bar.
Yeah, I would totally agree. And definitely this, next generation that is coming up definitely cares more about that career growth and that peer recognition. I would argue that one of the reasons probably that wheel works so well, it's not even necessarily the gift that they get at the end. It's them going up in front of their peers and spinning that wheel in front of everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yep.
cool. And quickly, sorry, Andrew, I'll get to you in 2 seconds. Tito, I know you actually have a few cool things that you do at Alti Sales to reward top performers as well. You want to talk through those real quick?
Yeah, I think the most popular one, which a lot of people love, is our quarterly SDR President's Club. So everybody who hits quota for the quarter is flown out to an exotic location somewhere in Latin America, and we just get together and spend 2 days or 3 days, 2 nights doing fun stuff. So the last time it was deep sea fishing, but we've also done like bungee jumping, whitewater rafting, water skiing, mountain biking, quad biking, all sorts of like cool events. So we just fly out on a Friday night. We do a super nice dinner with the whole team. Saturday we do a full day event, one of the many I've mentioned already. And then Sunday is kind of like your chill day. You just spend some time by the beach, play beach volley or whatever else, and then head back to the office on Monday. So that gets people really, really pumped. We're also a distributed company, so it gets all the top performers to hang out together. And one of our core values is also we're a team, not a family, which is a little bit controversial. A lot of people think of their peers as family. We say we're a team, so we're very high performing, and we're like very ambitious and driven, and we help each other out. But at the end of the day, it's all to get the team to win together. So yeah, those events are awesome.
That's cool. That's awesome, man. All right, Andrew, how are we cultivating alignment? And I know, a lot of the core values of this, goal-oriented, like hungry craftsman at Outreach. How is that cultivate?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's actually really simple. Like if you want to create a goal-oriented mindset, like come up with a common goal between your SDRs and your AEs, right? And I think this is a shift in mindset today, in AEs particularly. What you see, in general is a lot of AEs expect that meeting to get on their calendar that the SDRs book, right? Which is great. We all love that. But what is actually that common goal there? That common goal is getting that meeting in the first place, right? So these days, a lot of AEs will say, well, I don't expect, I just expect that show up. My job is to close the deal. Well, you're part of that account. It's not just to close the deal. It's to help get that deal. And if you reverse engineer that, what is it going to take to do that? Get the meeting, right? And then we'll hear a lot of, well, my job's not to prospect, right? Well, guess what? It kind of is, and a lot of it is too, is, well, I don't want to cold call because I've already done that in the past. It's not my job to cold call anymore. Well, guess what? We're still prospecting here, but most AEs haven't made one cold call in years, right? So I think in getting that common goal of getting first the SAL or the initial meeting that will eventually lead you to the deal, you need to, as an AE, be a quarterback and say, okay, our common goal is this SAL. How do we get it? That's where we start. And you, SDR, what we can do is have you do what you're best at, right? Have you cold call, have you send the cold emails, because me as an AE, I haven't done that in a while. I'm terrible at it, right? And so have them do that. And while they're doing that, you're coming at it at a different angle and you're saying, okay, what can I do that's still going to be prospecting in a way or help us move forward in this account? And something that our AEs are doing in order to do that for that common goal of getting that initial meeting in the first place is doing direct mail. How can I send direct mail while the SDR is contacting these folks, right? Using things like Sendoso, you can send a message or a package. I'll send a gift. You Sendoso. I get a notification that says when it's delivered. I forward that email to the SDR, and they start following up saying, hey, did you get our gift? I've CC'd Account Executive Andrew. Where are we at with this? Other ways of doing that is while SDRs are focusing on the cold calling, the cold emailing, doing that, and the LinkedIn touches, right? Another way we're coming at it is how do we use our partner ecosystem in order to get part of this deal, right? And I think that's a big topic right now, is how do you leverage the partner ecosystem to get into these deals, to show how you can provide value or more ROI on these other tools, right? Outreach, Zoom Info, for instance. So I think here, again, in short, it's just that shift of mindset of like that common goal with the SDR should be getting the sale, right? And that's not only the SDR's job, that's also the AE's job to do that, right? You're associated with that account.
Mhm.
I love this question. I'm super passionate about it, if you can't tell.
I love it. Yeah, no, you had a
Yeah.
ton of great points there. Like direct mail is huge. Leveraging partner ecosystem is huge. In tandem, well, your BDRs out there. There's other things like, inviting them to events that you have going on in the area. That's something that AE can focus on. Podcasts, webinars, getting them into the community is important as well. So I love that. All right, let's switch gears a little bit here and talk a little bit more through the individual contributor. I think a lot of what we were talking about there was more to the management realm. So Lauren, I want to start with you. If I am an SDR and I've been given my list of target accounts, maybe it's 300, maybe it's 3,000, and where do I start? Like, what's one way for me to prioritize where I spend my time so that I don't feel overwhelmed and I can sell effectively?
Yeah, so I think it's really important to have an understanding of what it is that makes an ideal buyer for you. And I'll go through an example of what we do here at Zoom Info. So we are a contact database. We help salespeople get in touch with their prospects by serving up phone numbers and email addresses. So our perfect client, of course, is anyone with a sales team, anyone who needs to be cold calling or, dialing, sending emails. So there are a lot of different data points that can lead to, hey, this customer might be more prone to buy us than another. And also, this customer may be more prone to spend more money with us, which at the end of the day, if I'm an account executive, that's what I'm trying to do. I want to close as many large deals as I can. And that can be really tough to do when you just get a list of 300 accounts. So we're very fortunate here in that we practice what we preach. And as an account executive, I would run my accounts through Zoom Info, and I would append any data points that may lead me to believe that customer is more apt to buy. And this could be very different depending on the organization. But here, for instance, if I wanted to run those 300 companies through, maybe the top 10 accounts are all 1,000 employees. But one company might have a sales team of 30, and one may have a sales team of 500. Well, obviously, I should be going after the one with the larger sales team because my buyers are salespeople. So having additional data points on top of just the name, the revenue, and the employee size are very important if you want to go after those low-hanging fruit. And I think, it's tough because a lot of sales leadership in the past has, and I've worked in companies like this where you're metriced on how many phone calls are you making? How many hours are you spending on the phone? And those aren't really actual metrics that are going to lead to revenue, right? The ones that are going to lead to revenue are how many conversations are you moving up the pipeline? How much pipeline are you generating? So I don't care if a rep makes 300 calls and touches each account. Are they going through those accounts in the right order? And so data points really do become important to prioritizing and going after those low-hanging fruits.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so do you think that falls on the individual, or should that be someone like yourself in sales enablement ops that actually go through, and should we not even be giving them just a target list? Should it be actually a like broken down, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way down, like a priority list? Is that what you do? Or is it on the individual to do that?
So here it's on the individual, and it really depends on what role you're in, right? In account management, you're going to focus on whichever opportunities are renewing soonest. But on new business, if I've got a book of business or potential business that I'm going after, you better believe that I'm going to be calling through the titles that are most relevant to me at the companies that have the highest propensity to buy. And we are very fortunate here in that we have a really solid understanding of who are those buyers who are going to hopefully come on board with us and spend the most with us. Obviously, there's still talent and skill that has to happen at the rep level in order to get that through the finish line. But we're not going to rank them 1 through 100. we will give them the data points they need to do that work on their own.
Yeah, I think that would be a great exercise for any SDRs or AEs that are prospecting is, take a day on the weekend to really go through your target accounts and put them in priority order based on, intent data or people or size of the team you can sell into. I think that would be a really helpful exercise.
Technology.
Tito.
Technology they're using. Yep.
Exactly. Yeah, technographics. Absolutely. Tito, how are you coaching your reps on where to prioritize their time?
So here's the way I think about account distribution, which is maybe very different from how other companies do it. I do not assign accounts to SDRs. I assign SDRs to accounts. And people are like, isn't that the same? And it's not. So here's what happens when you assign accounts to SDRs. By default, you're saying that you're giving a certain number of accounts to an SDR, and then they're going to be working those, and they can't go off limits up until you decide to reassign or reshuffle or change the accounts that you're going to give that SDR. And the problem with that is if you're working on a sequence-like product, like Outreach, what you're actually trying to do is provide a consistent experience to all these prospects across a sequence. Mm-hmm. And what that should actually mean is when they finish the sequence, they should not be worked anymore. So when you're constraining the accounts that an SDR has, and you're either giving few two behaviors. If you have 10,000 accounts, you have 4 SDRs, you give them 2,500 accounts each, and you say in 3 months we're going to reshuffle them. You know what my best strategy is as an SDR to maximize meetings? I'm going to spray and pray the hell out of people, right? Which isn't the right behavior. What if you do the opposite? You have too few accounts. You've run everybody through the right sequence. It's 8 steps. It's whatever. You're done. And then your manager refuses to give you new accounts. What do you need to do? You need to continue contacting those prospects and increase the number of phones and email and so on, and then you might annoy your prospects. So the way I think about it is the opposite. What you should do is grab a huge list of all your accounts, make sure that executive management, sales ops, whoever has decided what makes an account qualified. So for example, if you sell a service that helps companies that run e-commerce companies improve their Facebook ads, figure out what are all the companies that are running Facebook ads and mark them as target accounts. And then every time an SDR goes after an account, and you almost let them pick it. I'm going to go after account A, Amazon. I'm going to go after Amazon. Boom. You go after that, you timestamp it. They run through the regular sequence. You let them keep it maybe for another week or 2 or 3 if they want to do any sort of manual follow-up, but it's a short period of time. And after that, that account is unavailable for 3 months or so. It has a resting period. However, you have a lot of accounts, so the next ones are up for grabs. So as soon as the SDR is running low on leads, they can just boom, 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 select accounts and bring them in, and then you just limit the number of contacts that they're working at any given point. So my SDRs don't work more than 400 contacts at any given point are on sequence. If you have more than that, they are queued up, but you can't touch them. And if somebody else wants to queue them up themselves and touch them sooner, that's the way to do it. So why do we do this? Again, consistent experience for all the prospects, really easy workflow for SDRs, no spray and pray, and you prevent from you as the manager or the sales ops team being the bottleneck, having to rethink and reassign accounts. It's just everything is flowing, makes it easy for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. And I specifically also love the 3-month rest period. I don't think enough companies are doing that just because, one person didn't have success and then they're getting hit by this other thing. And people need to, if you've given your full sequence and you've run them through all the motions, I think you do need to ease off the gas for at least a little while. Andrew, would love your thoughts here as well, man. Being overwhelmed by just, too many target accounts. How do you prioritize?
Definitely. So I'll start with the first bucket. Overall, the theme here is going to be focus, right? And just focusing on a subset of accounts with your SDRs. What's that Tony Robbins quote? Where focus goes, energy flows, right? So in this case, I'll show you how we're doing it now here, or how our free AEs are doing it. So we'll sit down with our SDRs. We're trying to move to the 1-to-1 model at this time. We're more like a 4 or 5 to 1. ratio. But we're trying to move more into that one-to-one model. Why? For more focus, right? To focus specifically with a certain number of SDRs. What we'll do is meet with each of your SDRs each week for 30 minutes. Now, when I started here, what we did is we met with that SDR for 30 minutes, and I planned out what my top accounts are with the SDR, and I picked 10 of them. Said, we're going to come in here, we're going to pick 10 accounts, and the criteria we use is more than just company size and industry, right? It was scanning through LinkedIn. Do they have our types of personas like SDRs and an AE relationship, right? What does their hiring look like, and the descriptions of those hiring profiles? Does it say they're looking for people to do full cycle selling or work with SDRs? What does that look like? So we use items like that to determine what are our top 10 accounts. Now, from there, what we will do is we'll create a quick and dirty plan for each one of those accounts on how we're going to attack it. This goes back to what I was talking about earlier, right? SDR, you're going to sequence these particular people. These are the people we need to get in front of. While you do that, I'm going to go get warm intros from our execs or see how they're connected to these people we found on LinkedIn, because there's a team link there, right? And so we'll go through that motion. SDR's prospecting, I'm also prospecting, but more warm intros using channel or our partner ecosystem. And each week we will meet about those specific 10 accounts. Now, that doesn't mean we're not focusing on all the other accounts we have together, right? But what we are doing with those non-10 top target accounts is we are still engaging folks in those accounts, but with more automated sequences, right? So that's more of our low-hanging fruit. There's still some focus there, but not as much as in those 10 accounts there. And so that is the same motion we'll go through. Now, as soon as we get through a number of those top accounts, we either say this is DQ'd because they're using a competitor in a 30-year contract, or there's some executive issue here. This is never going to work. As soon as we get to about 5 of those accounts, we'll pick the next 5 target accounts, right? So we're continuously iterating on what those top 10 are and making sure we always have 10 to focus on there. So that's the quick and dirty version of really how we're creating that focus and that alignment there.
That makes sense. And I love your points on, on the target ones, obviously you're going to do more high touch. It's going to be much more personalized. And then on the lower ones, they're still getting, some love, but it's much more automated. All right, Andrew, I want to go back to you on this one. And this is specifically for the SDRs out there, because we did have quite a few joining us. So in the SDR function, you do the same pitch often over and over again, for a number of different prospects. Perhaps you have different personas, so you tweak it a little bit. Perhaps by industry, you're tweaking it. How can they make sure that each pitch is tailored towards their specific needs without getting into this habit of, being repetitive or, going off a script? We all get those calls where you can tell this person's directly reading off a script. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's all about the preparation of these reps, right? How well prepared they are before they get into that. And to get more granular on that, the prep, understanding the personas they're talking to, their pain points, and also the market in general, right? Like understanding what tools are available out there. If they say, hey, I'm using ZoomInfo, them knowing, oh, Outreach has an integration with ZoomInfo, right? Knowing little things like that, understanding the market, the tool set, the personas, that's going to work well. Not to say you shouldn't ever have a script. I think a script is great when you start out and you have a baseline, right? When I start doing my demos, when I initially started, I use the script. We're changing our demos. I'm kind of looking at a script as I go through it, but I'm using that to build the foundation, and then from there, iterate on that and add my own personality to it, right? So it goes back to the beginning, understanding the market, understanding the persona, and that way they can change on a dime, right? I get on a phone with a prospect, like, oh, hey, I noticed you use Salesforce, and so we'd be great for that. They're like, well, no, actually, we're on Dynamics. And then the rep can say, oh, okay, well, hey, we have multiple customers that don't use specifically Salesforce. Let me tell you more about that, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, totally. For me, a lot of what I hear in there, like, it goes down from this difference between just like knowing what you're saying and knowing what words overcome objections versus actually comprehending how to solve these problems, right? It's a big difference. And when I look like earlier in my career at a fintech company making like 100 cold calls a day, I remember I'd basically like black out sometimes when someone would answer the phone, and sometimes it would go off, but I would have no idea why, because I knew the words that would work, but I didn't know how to fully comprehend the problems and the challenges that they went every day. And so I think that's part of our jobs as leaders and as SDRs to learn is this comprehension piece where you actually start to fully understand and can kind of slow things down. Lauren, same question for you. How do you do it at ZoomInfo to make sure each pitch is tailored without getting into this habit of being too repetitive?
Sure. So I think I kind of see it in 3 layers, and Andrew did a really good job explaining the first 2. Layer 1, you're new, maybe you're selling a new product. It's your first time, pitching this specific solution. Yeah, use your script, get comfortable with it. Say the words until they become comfortable. Step 2 is get beyond the words, right? Say what you want to say, but because now you have a fuller, deeper understanding of how you can solve that problem for the customer. And then step 3, I think once you've been an SDR for a while and you're really confident in what you're doing and it starts to kind of feel a little bit repetitive, we've all been there. There's a layer that you can add to it that I think makes it fun and exciting, which is put some personality training behind it. There are a lot of different personality assessments out there. There's DISC, Myers-Briggs. There's a lot of different types online you can take totally for free. But I think once you understand what your product can do and you're able to empathize with your buyers, the final layer is how do those buyers like to be sold to, right? If I'm selling to Andrew, I might want to have a conversation that's really chatty and we can talk about sports and we can talk about, the weather. And I know it's not going to bore him because, right, Andrew? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like you and I could probably go on and on for hours, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm working with a buyer who might be a little bit more rigid and want all of the details, I'm going to approach that person with a very different pitch and try and be succinct and to the point. And you can tell this pretty easily by understanding who you are and taking some of those free assessments. A lot of people will have tells when you speak with them. Looking at their LinkedIn profile, you can see how wordy they are in their job descriptions, what jobs they've had in the past. And there's a lot of cool tools out there. One we don't use here, but I think is a really cool tool is called Crystal. And it actually aggregates what's on a LinkedIn page and then gives you a guess as to which DISC profile that person is most closely aligned with so that you can pitch to them not only, hey, here's our product and here's how it's going to solve your persona problem, but also how am I going to present that to you? Should I be a little bit more eloquent or should I stick to the facts and figures? And I think that's a cool way to just spice it up if you're feeling like you're getting into a monotonous, repetitive pitch.
That's excellent advice. I like that a lot and definitely would make it more fun and interesting for the rep. This is the thing that I've been playing with. We did the insights test. So involve me as my number 1. But yeah, no, it's cool. And based on personas, you can typically make a pretty educated guess on where a VP of marketing would fall on a DISC test versus like a CTO. Typically there's buckets, there's of course outliers, but I think that's awesome. I like that. And Crystal's a really cool tool. Tito, would love your thoughts here as well.
Yeah, I think the way I approach going after different clients and personalizing is I love the consistency. So one of the things that we do, especially within our outreach account, is we use master sequences, which means that the sequences that are built are mandatorily used by the SDRs. And then we're collecting a lot of data on it. So we use something called sentiment that allows us to understand what is the sentiment of the prospect as they responded to a previous email. Was that positive, meaning they gave us an intro and or took a meeting? Was it neutral, like a polite decline, somebody has no budget or no need or a competitor or whatever else? Or was it like an annoyed prospect who's saying, take me off your list, get out of here, how'd you get my number, whatever else, right? So consistency allows us to collect data. Now, when it comes to a phone, what's interesting is the top part of a conversation can be very, very scripted. And if you know how to use tonality, it will not sound scripted. So I think we have at this point at Alti Sales like 17 ways in which you can start the call. So I can call in and say, hey, Scott, this is Tito from Alti Sales. Do you have a quick moment? Or I can say, hey, Scott, this is Tito Port. I'm calling from Alti Sales. I'm the director of partnerships. I was hoping just briefly, do you have 2 minutes, right? Or I can say, hey, Scott, I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, blah, 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 right? And we have a lot of different ones. And we've tested them one by one across like our different targets and figure out which one has the highest conversion rate in terms of people saying, sure, what's up? Or, okay, go ahead, right? And if you can keep the data, especially at the top of the call, you can be quite scripted and you can ask a few questions. So what I recommend is all the scripts that we build have a short ask for permission or giving you a little bit of context of why we're calling. And then we ask a relevant question about you guys. So if I was selling something like, let's say, ZoomInfo or DiscoverOrg, I would ask something like, hey, you know, I talk to a lot of companies that have sales teams that need to penetrate new markets. And one of the things that they struggle the most with is finding contact data, phone numbers, and emails mostly. How are you guys currently managing the process of finding phone numbers and emails? Right? Do you have a database in place? Do you have a data vendor? You just use your internal CRM, or you know, how are you going through it? And then people will actually open up. If you've asked for permission, if you have a good tonality, if you portray knowledge and so on, people will tell you. They're like, oh yeah, we're using you know, just our internal CRM, and yeah, we don't always have phone numbers. It's like, okay, well, so glad I gave you a call. You know, we work with X, Y, and Z companies. We're really working your industry a lot. We'd love to show you kind of like how we collect data and how we work with it to be able to provide you more phone numbers and allow your sellers to spend more time selling and less time researching data. Right? Would you be open to a conversation?
Tito, you want to come work at ZoomInfo DiscoverOrg?
I want to come give you guys some training.
Great.
We should talk. But yeah, by asking smart questions rather than assuming, rather than like, hey, are you on Salesforce? Or hey, are you on this? Like, we have an integration. I much rather ask a question. And one thing I love doing, biggest hack you're going to hear today, tell them where you got the data from. So sometimes we call e-commerce companies and we say, hey, I was looking on Built With, and it seems like you guys are using Shopify. Is that correct? Right? So now you sound knowledgeable and you sound like you've done your homework, but you don't sound like a know-it-all, right? If you're like, hey, I know you're using Shopify, and they're like, no, I'm not. We just moved to Magento a month ago. You're like, okay. And now they're like, you're wrong. Ha. Well, if you say, I look on Built With, and it says you're using Shopify, is that correct? They're like, oh, no, actually, we moved to Magento. You're like, oh, well, that's awesome. Like, blah, blah, blah. This other client that uses Magento just signed up. So I'm so glad I gave you a call. What inspired the move? Right? Now you have a conversation. So asking questions in a smart way that gets people talking and knowing how to defend your information and your position, and then collecting data. Like all the tricks and tips that I give out is not that, oh, I came up with it yesterday and holy cow, like we should test this. I have had the master sequence go and send the same email 1,000 times across 4 templates. Literally my best emails get a positive response every 36 emails sent. So I send 180 emails, I get 3 demos. Boom, magic. We've tested it left and right? With our phone scripts, I currently have a rep that gets 50, well, this past week, it was an amazing week. He got 50% of people picking up the phone to take a meeting. So if they said, hello, this is John, we had a 50% chance to get a meeting. So it can get quite ridiculous if you really measure the data. And that's actually something I'm going to be talking about later today at the Outreach Sales Summit in Boston. So anybody around should come, and if not, I can share the recording on LinkedIn later on as well.
That's awesome. That's cool. So yeah, some of the things, just to reiterate a few things that you said there. I love this idea of, so you've got your master sequence and then you've got your phone script, and you're kind of breaking it into chunks and then having everyone run it, collecting all this data, and then you can see where you need to make changes quickly and effectively. Yeah.
Right. And there's one thing that you do really, really well, Scott, that I teach all my reps to do, which is called active listening, where you listen to what somebody says and then summarize and reiterate, and then you suggest something. So if you, just like you did, you summarize what I said. If after that you've gained a lot of trust and credibility on my end, one cool thing you can always do is say, given that now you are breaking your scripts into X, Y, and Z and blah, 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 what I would highly recommend is that you start using Outreach for X. So have you started using something like a sales cadence tool yet? And then I'll be like, oh, no, that's genius, right? So we're on the same page. So There's so many hacks and tricks here and there.
I've been a BDR, I've been a seller, and now I do 2 of these webinars a week. So I think if I didn't know how to active listen by now, I would have been, I got to get out of here. Awesome.
Cool.
All right. So we got time for about one final question, which I'm going to ask. And Lauren, if you will kick us off, I just want to know, we'll keep it kind of intentionally vague. What are a few hacks SDRs or AEs can do to manage their time effectively when speaking either on a demo or a discovery call, especially in regards to establishing or qualifying fit?
Sure. So one thing that we started doing here, which has been really cool, is we actually have a slide deck that we use on all of our discovery calls. So this is a little bit more pointed at an AE. But for each of the buyer personas that we work with, we have about 5 to 6 ways that we have seen and proven we can help people. And so what we'll do is if we're talking to a, let's say, marketing buyer, we'll put that slide up to help guide the discovery call. And what ends up happening is the marketer that you're speaking to tends to self-select into one of those categories. Even if you don't intentionally guide them there, having it up as a visual on the screen and saying, hey, here's how we have helped others, gets the conversation kind of moving in the direction that you want without you as the rep having to ask a lot of leading questions. And the cool thing about that too is then when it gets time to demo the product, if you know, hey, this customer is saying that they care about bubbles 1, 2, and 3 on this slide, well, the appropriate features to demo then are X, Y, and Z. Now I'm not going on a 30-minute tangent demoing my platform with a bunch of irrelevant features and functionality. So I think keeping it succinct, helping guide the conversation with a visual is huge. And also, before anyone graduates our boot camp, I put the challenge out there that if you're a quota carrying rep, I want you to have at least one wow moment where the customer says to you on the demo, whoa, you just solved what I said in the discovery is important to me. And having that little mental note of if I'm not getting that wow, I'm probably not going to win this deal is just a good way for people to kind of go out the door when it comes to training.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love the piece about, bucketing, having it up on a visual slide is so powerful because then you're almost proclaiming, you're putting a stake in the ground and being like, hey, we're the experts. We've done this 10,000 times. Here's the 3 things that we typically see. And then they can be like, oh, I'm in good hands. It's like when a doctor, tells you, don't worry, I've seen this a million times. You're going to be fine.
Yeah, you're not alone. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. Andrew, over to you. When you talk about demo discovery calls, how can people be managing their time effectively and qualifying fast, qualifying in or out?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things that we'll do here is like understanding, again, the persona that you're going to talk to before you get on the call, and then building out what you're going to, and this is for demos, building out what you're going to demo on a persona basis. So you want to make sure that you're speaking to all the personas on the call, right? If we look at something, I'll say outreach because it's what I do daily, right? It's like if I have an admin on the call, like a sales ops person and also a CRO on the call, I'm going to make sure I'm appealing to both of those folks, right? And have a demo prepped and be very clear, hey, this is from a sales ops perspective, right? And then actually be very transparent and say, this is from a CRO perspective. This is what you care about. This is top line revenue, et cetera, right? So I'll understand that and actually build out what I'm going to demo before. So it's never cookie cutter, right? Mm-hmm. It's never going to be that. It's going to be very persona based in that sense. Other thing as well is like before you get on the call, right? One thing that I'll do specifically is I'll talk to specific reps at the company. I won't just do all of my discovery with the people that I got on the phone. I'll do supplemental calls with people that are reps that are in the day-to-day as well, right? And understanding, hey, what is your perspective on this? Similar when you go to a doctor's office, before you see the doctor, you always see the nurse before, right? And they ask you, hey, like, why are you coming in today, right? And what's going on here? So that's the angle you're taking. And then once you actually see the doctor, the person responsible, they've seen this before. You can talk to them in that way, right? So I think that's very important there. And then, this is just little things, but like I don't ever wait to follow up after a demo or initial meeting, right? I don't wait like a day or so. I book time on my calendar immediately after to do it, so I don't lose anything, right? Super simple little hack, nothing too crazy there. But that's just one way as an account executive I've learned to manage my time.
Yeah, I love that. An immediate follow-up is super, super important as putting my buyer hat on. If I don't get the immediate follow-up, like, come on, what are you doing?
Yeah.
One thing I found helpful, I don't know if you've ever done this, Andrew, or anyone, but I used to do a really quick, like a recap video, because it was actually way quicker than just, writing everything down. And I'd be like, if I didn't have time to get their resources immediately, at least they felt like I was there and like paying attention to everything that they were saying.
Got it.
Just
yeah,
showing
one
that we were
interesting.
actively
One way to do this too is, on average, they say there's like 9 decision makers on average in some of these big accounts that you're working. So one play that we've been running specifically is I'll send Oso the CRO, basically send him a GIF, something he might be into that I think he's into. And then after I meet maybe with BDR managers, I'll do the normal follow-up, but I know I'm on that CRO's radar because I send him a gift. Right? People don't forget that. So what I'll do, even if I don't get a response from the CRO, I will send an email. It's like update on outreach. And I will give him, hey, I just spoke to X, Y, and Z. Just wanted to share some notes of what I found. And that I've gotten responses like 9 times out of 10 from them, like, hey, thanks for keeping me posted. This is a fair assessment or anything. So I'm making them feel like they're a part of the process, even though they're not in the day-to-day. Right. Yeah. So that's one little hack that I'm doing to manage my time. That way, when it comes time to sign a check or sign the contract, they're not like, who's this guy, Andrew? Right. Oh, no, I know exactly who he is. He's been keeping me updated the entire time. Right. Yeah. So little tweaks like that have been super useful for us. Yeah.
I love that. I like that a lot. All right. We're just getting over here, but Tito, I want to hear your thoughts quickly before we wrap up.
Yeah, I think there's so much variability, right? And Lauren and Andrew work at specific companies where they have tricks that work for them, but I think it's also so different regarding like what product you sell, and then if your product can be used in multiple ways. So both DiscoverOrg, ZoomInfo, and Outreach can be used in multiple ways by different people. So the way you disqualify and you demo is very different. I work with all sorts of different companies where sometimes they just have like a one-trick pony, right? Like we optimize images on your website to make your website faster. Like, and there's really no usability. It's not like a user is going and doing stuff. It's just like, or like cybersecurity software. It's just like you put it in the background and it just does stuff sometimes, right? Like nobody needs to like actively manage it. So I think in those contexts, like the questions you ask and like what do you show or how you explain things changes a lot, and you need to understand that like the way you run your process is also dependent on how your product is used. So I don't think I have a very simple answer. I'd say it depends, and it also depends on if the meetings that you're taking are inbound or outbound, right? So when it's inbound, it's really easy to ask, hey, what prompted you to reach out to us? Like, what do you want to see? What are you trying to accomplish? You can ask a lot of questions regarding like the person's goals, and that will give you a lot of information on how you proceed, right? I do that internally at Alti Sales. Like literally all the deals that we get are coming inbound, and I say, what's your average deal size? Do you have an internal SDR team? Have you tried it before? Have you tried outsourcing? I really want to get context so I understand like where they're coming from and I can tailor it to them. But when you go outbound, sometimes you first need to educate them on the problem. So you can't even say, hey, what are your goals for, like finding data? Like, well, I don't know. You reached out to me. Like, you tell me why do I need to do this? So you just gotta meet them where they are in their journey. And when they're really early, it's all about education. And discovering if they're a good fit or a bad fit might be dependent on a lot of stuff that you can just find online. Lauren was alluding to this, right? Like if they have a big sales team and they're doing net new business, then like they probably need contact info. So you don't even need to ask. You can just say, hey, I saw on LinkedIn that you have 42 sellers, and I assume, like, can you give me a breakdown? Are most of those going after existing accounts, or are you trying to sell into new accounts? And then anybody selling to new accounts will probably need data. So that's you almost have to tailor it to your own individual company and product. So don't just copy what anybody else is doing. Really think thoroughly about how you're going to build this for yourselves internally.
And I have to hop off, everyone. I want to say thank you very much. Contact me on LinkedIn if I can help with anything else. Thank you, Tito. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Scott. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
All right. Well, yeah, that'll take us to the end anyway. Tito, I remember something you said when we were prepping for this, and I think it's very relevant to this question. And it was never ask any question that you can find online, especially when you're selling into C-levels like executives. That's just a waste of time and it'll piss them off. And I like that little anecdote that you shared. But Tito, Lauren, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I know it was super valuable for the community. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And yeah, anyone who's listening, make sure you connect with Tito and Lauren on LinkedIn and go check out DiscoverOrg and Alti Sales.